Dr. Olsi, and then we will conclude at about 11. This is European time. This will be about 5 o'clock Malaysian time. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
If you have any slides, you can share slides. You can press the share slides and you can share your slides to us.
Can I share this Zoom channel on my Facebook and Twitter?
Yes, you can do that. Yes, you can do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brother Naziru,
yes, you can start right now.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome to another Islamic Renaissance Front webinar. This time we will be discussing a very important topic titled, "Is the plight of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang just Western propaganda?" We will be joined by very prominent speakers, experts on Uyghur issues. Dr. Olsi Jazexhi, Professor of History from Albania, from the University of Uighurs, and also Dr. Dolkun Isa. He is the president of the Uyghur World Congress. Before we introduce our guests, I would like to welcome you all on behalf of Islamic Renaissance Front and its founding director, Dr. Farooq Ahmed Musa, and the director, Dr. Azrul. And let me just explain how we will go about this webinar. First, as a moderator, by the way, I am Osman Softic. I join you from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I am a senior research fellow with the Islamic Renaissance Front, and I will be moderating this webinar. So once again, welcome to everyone who joined us today. Let me introduce our program to you. Just a small introduction for about 10 minutes, and then we will let our speakers present their talks. First, we will ask Dr. Olsi Jazexhi to speak, then Dr. Dolkun Isa. They will be speaking for about half an hour each. Then we will have a discussion. There will be questions directed to both Dr. Olsi and Dr. Dolkun Isa. Then we will conclude at about 11 o'clock European time and or 5 p.m. Malaysian time. As I mentioned, our topic today is about the plight of Uyghur Muslims in China, in Xinjiang, and the topic is titled, "Is the plight of Uyghurs just Western propaganda?" This will be answered by our respected scholars. As you know, Xinjiang is the largest and most western part of China's administrative region, surrounded by Mongolia, Russia, Kazakhstan, and other Central Asian countries. It is inhabited by 40 different ethnic groups, the largest of which are Uyghur Muslims. The significant outbreak of violence took place in 2009 in the city of Urumqi, during which many people were killed and hundreds were injured. And also the massive state-sponsored Han Chinese migration took place from 1950s to 1970s, and the government instituted policies promoting Chinese cultural, what they call Chinese cultural unity, and punishing certain expressions of Uyghur identity, and heavy-handed responses to separatist tendencies were practiced by the Chinese authorities. Also, there was a lot of discrimination by the authorities and by the Han Chinese against the Uyghur people.
Ali? Ali?
We have an interruption, I think.
Ali, please. Ali?
There was a hacking probably.
Yeah, there was.
Now we're good. We're back.
Are we good? Thank you.
Yeah.
The Chinese government under the Communist Party control is taking the accusations of its oppression, human rights violations and atrocities against the Uyghur Muslim minority community lightly. Beijing authorities have mounted a sophisticated campaign to sway public opinion abroad to its side. China painted sanitized images of the camps by holding guided tours for foreign journalists and diplomats. So these are some of the issues we will be discussing with our respected speakers today. And ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Olsi Jazexhi from Albania. Dr. Olsi is a Canadian Albanian historian who is specialized in the history of Islam, nationalism and religious reformation in Southeast Europe. Dr. Olsi's interests converse nationalism, radicalism, religious and ethnic identities in the Balkans and further afield. He teaches history at the University of Jazexhi in Albania and is a freelance investigative journalist. Interestingly enough, in August 2019, Dr. Olsi personally visited Xinjiang region in China and reported the situation of Muslims in China's concentration camps, which are termed by Chinese authorities as vocational training centers. Dr. Olsi Jazexhi, welcome to the Islamic Renaissance Front webinar. And we will give you the floor and allow you to make your presentation about your take and your experiences about this immensely important topic, which has been taking a global attention in recent months, if not years. Welcome, Dr. Olsi.
Thank you for having me, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I like the title of this webinar, which you named it, Is the plight of the Uyghurs just Western propaganda? This was one of the reasons that sent me into investigating the Uyghur issue. In general, I'm skeptic to news when they come from Western media outlets like BBC or CNN or what have you. And this is related to our experience in the Balkans, because in 2011, 12, 13, we had a lot of propaganda being done against Syria, which sent many European and Balkan Muslims to join jihad in Syria and to end up as terrorist fighters. So with this idea in mind, when I was seeing Western media outlets talking about the plight of the Uyghurs, I was a bit skeptic and I wanted to investigate myself in order to understand what is really going on. My suspicion was that the life of Uyghurs in Xinjiang is good, but some Western and probably American ruffians were trying to do a second jihad against another country which does not obey to the American hegemony. And for this reason, in July of 2019, I approached the Chinese embassy in Tirana, Albania. I told them what is going on, and I told them my fears because I suspected that there was no issue with the Uyghurs, but the West was trying to again radicalize Muslims and use them as its terrorist foot soldiers against countries that they want to destabilize. For this reason, after presenting myself to the Chinese embassy, a few days later, I was invited to join a group of journalists who were going to visit Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region of China. So from 16th to the 25th of August, I visited East Turkestan or Xinjiang and investigated myself what was going on. But unfortunately, my expectations did not come true. The problem is that the Uyghurs were really suffering. When I was part of a group of journalists, so when I landed at Urumqi, I started to see and investigate what is going on or what was going on in Xinjiang. My findings from this trip was that number one, the Chinese are very fast mass colonizing the Xinjiang region or East Turkestan. There was massive Chinese investments and millions of Chinese settlers who were coming from the other parts of China and settling in Xinjiang. And then during our visit in East Turkestan, we noted that almost all major state officials and police and what have you, they were Han Chinese. So when somebody visits Xinjiang, he gets the impression as if he's visiting Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Haifa, where you see Israeli colonists who have taken a piece of land, turned it into their own country, and on the other hand, they discriminate the natives. So like in Israel and in Palestine, where we see an apartheid regime, where Israeli settlers rule over native Palestinians, you could see the same thing happening in Xinjiang. So as a foreign observer, you can immediately notice that this is a colonized province. The second thing is you observe a massive military state apparatus which supervises every street, every area, every shopping area, etc. So it was a resemblance from my visit in Palestine, in West Bank and Israel in December 2018. So you are faced with a military regime which is imposed by Beijing, and it is directed against the native Uyghur Muslim population. Then during our stay, our Chinese hosts, they delivered us a number of lectures, and the lecturers were, of course, Han Chinese, people coming from other parts of China, who conveyed to us a very Islamophobic and anti-Muslim and anti-Turkic perspective on the history of Xinjiang. So the official state narrative, which somebody can very easily see it even in the white papers that the Chinese government has released about Xinjiang, you see that the local Turkic Muslims, be them Uyghurs, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Tatars, and others, they are all depicted as being immigrants or latecomers to Xinjiang. And the official state propaganda that the CCP conveys to journalists like us, but even to the schools of the province, is that this province has historically been Han Chinese. Now, coming from Balkans, This kind of propaganda had a very familiar resemblance coming into my mind when we look back at Yugoslavia and the Serb chauvinistic propaganda that we have seen, but even Catholic in some cases, where at least since the Congress of Berlin of 1878, we, the Muslims of Southeastern Europe, are portrayed and depicted by fascist Christian propaganda here in the Balkans as Turks, as latecomers, as foreigners that should be either forcefully converted into Christianity or deported back to Anatolia and Turkey. The same propaganda we received when we were in Urumqi, in a hotel where for, I think, 2 days or 3 probably, we were delivered a number of lectures. During our visit in Xinjiang, our CCP friends who organized the event from the information office of Xinjiang, they sent us to 3 state museums in Urumqi, in Aksu, and in Kashgar. Even in these museums, we took the same lesson, which showed to us that the Xinjiang region, Altai Mountains, from where we as historians know that the Turkic race came from, but the official narrative of the Chinese in these state museums was no, there were no Turks here, there were only Han Chinese. And these Indo-European people with beards, they came from other parts of the world. This was in a sharp contradiction to the historical findings that these state museums had, because many mummies that were preserved and were displayed in these museums showed that the people who lived Xinjiang maybe like 2,000 or 5,000 years ago were people with beards, and they were not Han Chinese, but they were Indo-Europeans. Now, as a professional historian that I am, I understood that we are dealing with a historical manipulation, with historicism, which was coming on the part of the Chinese government. And moreover, as somebody who is critical to Western imperialism and capitalism, I was shocked because in the People's Republic of China, I didn't find a socialist ideology, I didn't find a Marxist narrative on the history, where according to Marx, proletarians, they have no nation, but the official narrative that the Communist Party of China was depicting in this region was an Han imperialist narrative. So in a way, what I understood, and I told even to our Chinese friends when I was there, I told them I was hoping that you would be socialist or communist or Marxist, but unfortunately, it seems that you are Chinese imperialists. So you are, because in these state museums, we had, I mean, for example, I have even pictures of that. You had big signs in the walls writing that Islam is a foreign religion, which came through Turkish and Arab violence and primitivism, and the Uyghurs, they are not Muslims, but they were Buddhists, and the whole official narrative was a narrative of a Han Chinese Buddhist and Confucian reconquista. Like if we have, let us say, in Europe, in Spain, the history of Catholic reconquista in Andalusia against Muslims, here we had a Confucian and a Buddhist Han Chinese version of reconquista against Islam. As long as I was observing these things in state institutions, in the white papers, I understood that there is an official state Islamophobia in China against Muslims, but for the sake of respecting the people who had invited us, I was keeping silent, I was not making too many comments, etc. But then what happened is, I forgot the exact date, but I mean, after landing in Urumqi around 4 or 5 days later, we visited the first concentration camp, or what our Chinese officials were telling us, and how they were calling them, the vocational training centers. And here is where the big shock came, not only for me, but for the all journalists who were part of this visit. We found out that Chinese authorities were taking people from the streets. They were taking Uyghurs, Muslims, Turkic people, Kazakhs from the streets, and they were sending them in mass detention centers. These mass detention centers, which we in the West call them concentration camps, and according to many Western analysts, it is estimated that from 1 to 3 million Muslims are locked into these centers. But one of the lecturers that we had in this visit, he told us that he thinks that the number is probably 500,000. So the number 1 or 3 million is exaggerated, but 500,000 is still a lot. So in these centers, what the Chinese government was doing with the Muslims of Xinjiang, they were taking them from the street and they were forcefully de-Islamizing them. These were not schools like the Chinese government wants to depict them. They were prisons. And for me as an East European coming from, I mean, when I was young, I lived in a Stalinist communist Albania where we had this kind of mass detentions, where the criminal elements of the society were put in order to be educated. But of course, in these detention centers that we had in time of communism in Albania, the number was very few and the people who were going there were criminals. But what I saw in China, in Xinjiang, was that the Chinese government was jailing in an industrial scale the Uyghurs, mainly the youths, sending them into these centers and forcing them to renounce their Turkic and Islamic identity. With this Samsung phone that I have in my hand, when I was in these centers, I recorded many interviews with many of these detained Uyghur Muslims. And even though the Chinese propaganda was telling to us that the people who were in these centers, they were terrorists, they were Islamic extremists, suicide bombers, etc. When I started interviewing these people and asking them who they are, what is their crime, the answers were I mean, unimaginable. These people were sent into these detention centers because they had read a history of Uyghurs, because they had prayed to Allah, because they had put a headscarf, because they had made a Muslim religious marriage nikah, because they had told to their mother to read the Quran, and things which are unimaginable for us who live in free, liberal democracies. And what we understood was that the Chinese government was implementing a program in Xinjiang where it was trying to, in an industrial scale, destroy the Muslims of Xinjiang. These people that we met were forced to 24 hours a day speak Han Chinese, read and write Han Chinese, learn Han Chinese history, philosophy, law, and culture. So in few words, they were forcefully being Sinized. Moreover, during our visit in Xinjiang, the Chinese authorities, they presented us with an ambitious imperialist project that the Chinese government has, which is One Road and One Belt project. And wherever we were going in state institutions and everywhere, we were shown massive maps which were showing the project of the Communist Party of China to turn China into a global economic superpower. We were shown highways, railways, which were starting from Beijing and passing through Xinjiang. And from Xinjiang and Urumqi, they were spreading throughout Asia, even in Europe and Africa. And the network of highways that the Chinese government was planning to build was going to end in Istanbul, in Morocco, in Africa, and everywhere else. So what we understood during our visit was that the Chinese government is trying to, in an industrial scale, to destroy the Muslims of Xinjiang, in an industrial scale is mass colonizing Xinjiang, because Xinjiang is very important for its imperialist project of one road and one belt. So we witnessed a Muslim genocide. These people that we saw in these detention centers, they were prisoners, because for the people who can see my videos, I made a number of questions to their so-called teachers, who were thought control teachers, and we asked them, you claim that these are schools. Now, when you go to school, you go out of your own free will, you are allowed to contact your family, you have freedoms, you have access to internet, to the phones, etc. But do these people have these rights? The answer was no. So people were being taken away from their families, separated from their children, husbands, mothers, fathers, and they were locked into these centers for years. And the condition for them to be released from these centers was to reject and forget their Islamic identity, their belief in Allah, their Turkic language and culture, to be fully turned into Chinese. So for people who are familiar with Rudyard Kipling and the history of British imperialism in Africa and in Asia, what the British made in 100 or 200 years through their soft power and schools in India and in Africa, the Chinese government to do within few years. If the famous thing of Rudyard Kipling, who looks an Indian but thinks as a British and acts as a British. In the case of Xinjiang, we had the Chinese government who was taking these Uyghurs, who looked Uyghurs, but who were forcefully forced to think as Chinese, to speak as Chinese, and to act as Chinese. It was a cultural genocide, a very violent process. This is, in few words, my presentation. And to conclude it, I was wrong. It was not just Western propaganda, what I heard about Uyghurs, but it was true. Unfortunately, the champions of the Uyghur issue nowadays are Islamophobes like Mike Pompeo and people from the American Congress and State Department. But why these people speak about Uyghurs, this doesn't mean that the Uyghur issue doesn't exist. And this doesn't mean that we have to be silent on the Uyghur issue and to say, no, it doesn't exist, or no, we don't want to hear about it because American Islamophobes speak about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Olsi Jazexhi, for your extraordinary presentation and for sharing your own personal experiences from your visit to Xinjiang region last year. It is particularly important that you, I believe that you share your views and give your perspective, especially because you, as you mentioned, you've personally been critical of some of the Western press and quite skeptical. So it is very important to, so to speak, to corroborate what the press in the West has been saying for quite some time now about the human rights violations of the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. And I think it's very important to talk about it because the Xinjiang, it's a very vast region. It's the biggest Chinese province. It comprises the 1/6 of the territory. And as you mentioned, it abounds in natural resources, and it's obviously strategically very important for this, what you mentioned, what you termed as imperialist project, the Belt and Road Initiative. So thank you so much for that, for sharing that with us. It actually also confirms a report that was recently published by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute by a group of authors One of them is a young researcher and expert, Nathan Rusa, who was saying that there was a lot of destruction of mosques and cemeteries and heritage of Muslim sites, historical Islamic heritage, which he interpreted from the satellite images. And he's, by the way, a very well-known expert on interpretation of satellite images. It's a very special skill that he presented in this report together with other authors. Now, let me introduce our respected scholar and speaker, Dr. Dolkun Isa. Dr. Isa is joining us from Germany, from Berlin, where he's based. Dr. Isa is an Uyghur politician. He is also an activist from the region of Xinjiang, or we used to say Xinjiang, Uyghur, what China terms as autonomous region, also known as East Turkestan. Dr. Isa is the third and current president of the World Uyghur Congress, the organization that represents the interests of Uyghur people worldwide. Dr. Isa has been in office as president of this organization from November the 12th, 2017. He previously served as General Secretary and as chairman of the Executive Committee of the Congress separately, and he has spoken on behalf of the rights of the Uyghur Muslim people worldwide, which, by the way, Uyghurs make up the majority population of that region. Dr. Isa has been very outspoken in relation to human rights violations, human rights issues. He spoke to the United Nations Human Rights Council, to European Parliament, various European governments, and international human rights organizations. Dr. Dolkun Isa joins us from Berlin in Germany. Dr. Isa, welcome to the Islamic Renaissance Front webinar. Now we will give you the floor to present your views. We are very fortunate, very grateful for dedicating your precious time to speak with our audience at the Islamic Renaissance Front webinar. It's a very important topic. Obviously, we have heard your colleague, Dr. Olsi. He's a historian, his own perspective, but we would like to hear what you have to say from your you being Uyghur yourself. You know you were born in this region, and it is very important that you share your views on this globally significant topic and what is now affecting your own people in Xinjiang. Please.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much. I thank Islamic Renaissance Front for inviting this panel. And before I speak, I'd like to make a small correction. I'm not doctor. I don't have a doctor title, unfortunately. So yeah. Maybe in the future. So if I'm not corrected this, maybe next day China use this excuse and attack me again. So thanks. However, it's my honor you call me the doctor, but unfortunately I'm not doctor. Yeah, I'm just simple activist. Well, before I talk about the Uyghur issue and the current Uyghur current situation, I would like to talk a little bit historical background, who is the Uyghur, and because it will be helpful to better understand for the audience to why Chinese government is attack to the Uyghur and why the Chinese government so and targeting and trying to erase the Uyghur identity, national identity, religious identity. So, well, Uyghur actually, because Chinese government all the time mentioned the Uyghurs are part of the Zhonghua Minzu, it's Han Chinese, you know. Actually, Uyghurs has no any link with Chinese. Culturally, religiously, linguistically, geographically, we don't have any link with Han Chinese people. We have own culture, own identity, own religious, and everything is different. This is the colonized territory. Uyghur are ethnically Turkic-speaking people, and we call our homeland is East Turkestan. But China occupies this country. Chinese Communist Army forced and they used military occupied in 1949. Then called the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region 1955. This Xinjiang is a Chinese name. Xin is new, Jiang is a border territory. If you look at Xinjiang, its meaning is that this colonized, occupied territory. So we have never accepted this name is Xinjiang, and historical name, geographical name is Turkestan, because a part of the big gross Turkestan, west part was occupied by the Russian Empire in the 19th century, and east part occupied by the Manchu Empire, Chinese Empire. Then is called East Turkestan. Today's west part of Turkestan is Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. This is the independent country. But East Turkestan has been continued occupied by China. So we have our own unique language, culture, history. We are Sunni Muslim. According to the Chinese census, Uyghur population is 11.6 million. But we believe this Uyghur in this Turkestan actually is 20 to 25 million. And more than 1 million Uyghur living in Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, this in historically Western Turkestan. We have a border with China, Mongol, Russian, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, India, Tibet. We have with the border, Turkestan has a border, 11 countries. Yes. Territorial size 1.828 square kilometer. It is mean 5 times larger than Germany, 2.5 times larger than Turkey. I don't know how compared with Malaysia or the Bosnia. So this is Turkestan is homeland, mostly Turk-speaking people, like mostly Uyghurs and other Central Asia Turk-speaking people, the Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Uzbek, Tatar, and the Tajiks. In 1955, and as I said, Chinese government occupied 1949. Then after 5 years later, Chinese government established Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Today, this constitutionally autonomous region. And in China, has 5 autonomous regions. East Turkestan is so-called Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, one of them autonomous region. But since the 65 years, we have never seen the real autonomy. This just all the fake autonomy and the paper autonomy. We have never seen the sign of the autonomy. All constitutional and autonomic right, includes the political, cultural, economic, social right, has been continually violated by the Chinese authority. And then since the 1950, Chinese government systematically population transport to the area. 1949, when the Chinese Communist Army occupied East Turkestan, Uyghur population is 85% of the total population, and the rest of 10% is Kazakh, Kyrgyz, some other minority. 3 or 4% of Han Chinese population, just around 4%. But since the 71 years, 1st of October is the Chinese National Day, it's a mourning day for us. We will hold a worldwide protest this day, next Thursday. So 71 years, no, and the official number, Uyghurs is 45%, Chinese population 42, increasing 42%. But real number, we don't know because we don't have opportunity to estimate the real number. So Chinese government is the main purpose is constantly population transport and the being Uyghur, trying to Uyghur being on minorities this area. Yes. So this is the historical background, and China all the time saying Xinjiang is a big territory, small population. This is the excuse. Chinese government continually population transport this area. But this is the one reality I would like to mention. Yes, this is a big territory, but only 4.6% total area is inhabitable area. Around 96% of the total area in uninhabitable area because it's located three mountains. One is north part is Altai mountain, middle of the Turkestan is Tian Shan, counterattack mountain, and south part mountain, and the second the world desert and the Taklamakan desert after Sahara is located in this area. So that's why we have very limited water resource. And the inhabitable area is very limited. But China all the time use this word, China, Xinjiang, so-called Xinjiang, big territories and continually population transport. Here's this area. Yeah, this is the little bit historical background of the Turkestan and the Uyghur people. Well, my friend Olsi already talking about what's going on and what the Chinese policy towards Uyghur. He was the one of the eyewitness recently visited Turkestan. So we and as Olsi said, the situation of Uyghurs and they're really and the critical and the effort today. Today we estimate more than 3 million innocent Uyghurs are being arbitrary detention. This is we call 21st century concentration camp. But recently, Chinese government published a white paper and this report is saying this first time Chinese government and the indirect accept since 2014, each year 1.5 million Uyghur targeting for the re-education system. This is a China officially and announced first time accept. It is mean if we calculate from 2014, each year targeting 1.5 million Uyghur for the eradication, it has been already 6 years, then more than 8 million Uyghurs already targeting for the eradication. Yeah. But these people, and these people have charged with any crime, provide with a lawyer and given no any trial. This is the completely innocent people, and they have been detained because of their ethnicity, because they are born Uyghur, because they are Muslim. In the past, and the past 5 years in particularly, we have witnessed strategy of the Chinese government shift unapologetic assimilation and social re-engineering of the Uyghur people. Everything make Uyghur people unique or language, religious, and the culture has been targeted. The young generation of the Uyghur being targeted in particular for indoctrination and the brainwashing. However, Chinese this persecution not only for the Uyghur, of course. This is Tibetan and so the Mongolian, Hong Kongers, Chinese Christian, and some other activists also suffering today. And we all the world has witnessed what was going on in Hong Kong. And now Hong Kong is no more autonomy anymore. This atrocity which is going in Turkestan is not new. This problem was started since occupation, 1949. Chinese government has has dramatically increased separation in Turkestan since September 11, 2001 terrorist attack in New York. Before September 11, Chinese government cracked down the Uyghur movement, used the language, religious fundamentalists, or nationalists, or separatists. Chinese government had never used a terrorist, this term, before September 11. After September 11, Chinese government immediately changed language and accused Uyghur activism as a terrorist. Because we are Muslim, very easy to and crack down to Uyghurs, and because most of them and the Western media, unfortunately, Islam and the terrorism and they put the same category. Then China just want to use this advantage and trying to attack those Uyghurs and use terrorism term. First, 2002, Chinese government put the East Turkestan Islamic movement as a terrorist organization. No? Then 2003, Chinese government blamed 4 Uyghur organizations in exile and 11 people as a terrorist. One of them is me. 2003, 15th of September, Chinese government and officially announced 11 people. My number on the number 3 of terrorist list. I was a student's leader. When I was a student at Xinjiang University, I studied physics. 1988, we held a mass demonstration against the Chinese repression policy towards Uyghurs. We are accused equal right. We are against the discrimination policy. When I was a student, I established students' union. Purpose is educate our people. Because 75–80% Uighurs Muslim are analphabetic. Because no school, most of them area. So I mobilized 100,000 Uyghur students during the summer and the winter holiday to send to rural area village to voluntarily teaching alphabet to those people. But Chinese government was not happy. And according to the Chinese constitution and the autonomous law, Uyghur language in the official language of the China, even today. But unfortunately, we cannot use it in the practically. So, and 1988, we hold a mass demonstration and we stop atomic test, we stop and the discrimination, we demand equal right, and we demand also the democratic election. Because of this, I was house arrested and I was kicked out from the university. I was not able to graduate university. That's why I couldn't get a doctor title. Yeah. So, but China and blame me and as a terrorist. Well, all my life, I have never seen a real bomb and a real gun in my lifetime. I never touched. I saw the bomb and the gun is just a Hollywood film. But China puts my number 3 terrorist list because trying to stop my activism to the international. Because Chinese government trying to hide the reality from the international, and the Chinese government didn't want Uyghur problem is one being the international problem, and they very easily cracked down. But I'm doing the voice of the Uyghurs, being the voice of the Uyghur, and to raise this issue to the United Nations, European Parliament, and different country in different international area. So that's why Chinese government use this term and trying to crack down the Uyghurs. Particularly under Xi Jinping leadership and the appointed party secretary Xinjiang, who's a party secretary in Tibet, 2011-2016, and Xinjiang was the appointed the party secretary in so-called Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. The institution really getting and deteriorate. Maybe most of them will know. 2014-2015, this 1 year, more than 150 Tibetan self-immigrated. Because that time Xinjiang was the party secretary in Tibet, no way to express then, and more than 150 Tibetans self-immigrated burning themselves. Yeah. This guy is a party secretary since 2016 and still is a party secretary in East Turkestan. After he was appointed party secretary of Turkestan, first 10,000 of new police and military personnel have been sent to the control of the Uyghur population and the densest network of the police station, roadblocks, checkpoint, and ensuring absolute control of the Uyghurs. Only within 4 months from August 2016 to December 4 months, he established 960 police monitoring stations in the Ürümqi, capital of Turkestan. And we have also witnessed mass collection of the personal data from the CCTV scanners, facial recognition software, public database, police checkpoint, and the DNA and the blood samples. Face recognition camera, voice recognition camera developed and tested in Turkestan, then use it to the other provinces of China. Now it's more than 20 countries around the world import Chinese surveillance technology. Today, millions of Uyghurs are suffering and deprived of their basic rights. They are subject to brainwashing and eroding their ties to their Uyghur identity and they face torture, enforced disappearance, and this if they are not cooperate with the Chinese government. Starting April 2017, Chinese government start cutting off all communication between Uyghurs in Turkestan and diaspora. They have begun rounding up thousands of Uyghurs sending to the camps. Like almost all the Uyghur in diaspora, I have lost contact with my family since April 2017. For over the 4 years, I have been unable to contact my family member. But during the first time, I have got only heartbreaking news. I received that my mother had passed away. She had died on May 17, 2018, one of the concentration camps in Turkestan. And the beginning of the 2020, January, I got second heartbreaking news. My father died, but still I have no idea what condition my father died. Where is his cemetery? I have no idea. I couldn't access to my family. It is just an example. All the Uyghurs who are living in exile, Germany, United States, Turkey, Central Asia, rest of the world, had the same experience, same story. Maybe some story is more horrible than me. Yes, I had not able to my family member, my friends, over the 26 years since I left my homeland. Today is that Uyghur children are being targeted for brainwashing and indoctrination. As the Chinese government attempt to erode Uyghur identity from the future generation. They are not allowed to be educated of the native Uyghur language, learn religions from their parents, and even no possibility to religious practice. So many mosques was destroyed. ASPI, Australia, you already mentioned at the beginning, Australian Strategic Policy Institute published a report just this week, and the report saying, using satellite image, and they estimate 16,000 mosques. 16,000 mosques in this so-called Xinjiang, Turkestan, has been destroyed and damaged since 2017. All important Islamic sacred sites and cemeteries and some other Islamic sites is completely demolished today. Quran were banned, fasting forbidden, and even you cannot give Islamic name to your children, your baby, since 2016. Today, Muhammad, Samad, Ahmad, Isa, this all the name in the Khadija, Aisha is forbidden. Even you could grow up birth. And the Chinese government has described Islam officially, Islam as an ideological illness that must be eradicated. Chinese Communist Party were openly saying this. And Uyghur held in the camp are forced to renounce religious beliefs and the national identity. friends Olsi, when he visit East Turkestan and returned back, he shows some youth video, and he asks one Uyghur lady saying, "What is your name?" "My name Aisha." You know, "Are you Muslim?" He doesn't know. "Since when?" "Last year." Even he couldn't use the overall Uyghur language, you know. And also asked Salam Alaikum. She couldn't answer it wa alaikum assalam, because not allowed to use any Islamic word. And the forbidden fasting. 2015, 2016, completely forbidden fasting during the Ramadan time. Yeah. And particularly school and governmental employer during the lunch time testing fasting, because some students, some teachers, some employer is fasting secretly. During the lunch time, provide water and the food, force it to eat. Who test them? Who refuse to eat drink, and you are fasting, that will be punished. And another report March this year, ASPI published, and Uyghurs are now being subject to modern slavery, forced labor, and the very main issue today. ASPI report more than 82,000 Uyghurs use of forced labor. So many Western company still use the Uyghur forced labor, chief laborers today. 2018, Chinese government stopped 4 months all transportation between China to East Turkestan. We were surprised why. Train, flight, everything. Then later we realized within 4 months, Chinese government transport Uyghur detainer from East Turkestan, from the concentration camp to other province of China. We didn't know that time what purpose, but we can suspicion only. Maybe they will be targeting for the forced labor, maybe they will targeting for the organ harvesting. Because Chinese government and the advertisement, halal organ transportation, you know. So later, and the ASPI report published, then and we confirmed that the Chinese government used Uyghur detainer to transport other provinces of China to use forced labor, and also besides this, and the organ harvesting. ASPI report saying 82,000 people for targeting for this, but another organization based in Rome, Bitter Winter report 2019 saying around 400,000 Uyghur detainers forced transport as a president of China. Nearly 500,000 of Uyghurs. You know? So it is difficult to confirm how many people and they transfer to the other province of China, and okay, we know now is that definitely and they used for forced labor, but exactly number how much we don't know, and how many for the use of forced labor, how many for the organ used for the organ harvesting, and recently another report, Adira Zenz, German scholar Adira Zenz, and published his report, and Uyghur women forced and sterilization. Actually, Chinese government and the Uyghur women and the forced sterilization policy is not new. Chinese government started this policy in 1984. When I was in Turkestan at that time, some the one-child policy for the so-called minority Uyghur Tibetan two-child policy. But actually, after you get first child, you have to wait 5 years, you can get second child. After you get first child, and the Chinese government encourage you, stop to have a second child, you know. And step by step, and beginning of 1990, Chinese government very restrictive and implement this one-child policy towards Uyghurs and some other people, Muslim people. So this is the main purpose of the Chinese government and the Uyghurs being minority and assimilation. This is the long term. At the beginning of my speech, I told since occupation 1949, Chinese government's policy, population transport as a policy has never changed. Chinese government's policy towards Uyghurs, assimilation policy has never changed. Sometimes implemented very strictly, sometimes used very little bit soft way, sometimes and really used this violent way to implement it. But after Xi Jinping took power 2014, and the Chinese government take out the mask and use and very violent way and crack down before and abandon this assimilation policy. No Chinese government really implemented genocide, ethnic cleansing policy, and the crime against it, implemented crime against the Uyghurs. It is the and really we can say it's genocide implemented. No, and yeah, well, such a atrocity was happening, but still most of some world is silent. Yeah, this policy that I already say, the Chinese government, this new white papers saying since 2014, each year 1.5 million Uyghurs in target for eradication. It is minimum almost 6 years. So implement this eradication, so-called eradication, but it's concentration camp. We are trying to raise this issue to the United Nations, European institutions, several of countries, some other international platform. Well, nobody listened to us until end of 2018. 2018, August, United Nations Committee and eliminated racial discrimination committee, third committee review of the Chinese report. This is a turning point. Then this committee review Chinese report, then publish and more than 1 million Uyghurs and the concentration camp. Then and the international media attention to the Uyghur issue. And in November 2018, United Nations Human Rights Council review general and UPR on China, universal periodic review on China. That time, in the first time, 14 countries, and the rise of the Uyghur concentration camp issue, asked the Chinese government close down the camp. This is the turning point, you know. Since 2018, then now and really some international media attention, some country, particularly European countries, some Western country, and really focus on this issue. Then step by step, 2019, 23 countries first time issued joint statement, asked Chinese government closed down the camp. Then later another two countries joining this joint statement. But Chinese government encouraged another 49 countries support Chinese repression policy towards Uyghurs. So, among them, 16 is a Muslim country, unfortunately. 16. Pakistan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, this all major Muslim Muslim country support the Chinese policy. Today, I told, is also already explained, I told already, Chinese government know and targeting the Uyghurs in the concentration camp asks the religious identity. You have to wife, you know, saying, well, this food, this water are not given by the God. This water, this food was given by the CCP, Chinese Communist Party. This water, this food, this wonderful life was given by Xi Jinping. Thanks for the Xi Jinping. Thanks for the Communist Party. And the Chinese CCP very openly saying Islam is ideological illness. It must be eradicated. Chinese government no targeted Islam, start war against Islam. But unfortunately, so far, and no Islamic country and they really speaking out on this issue. But however, good, we have seen some positive steps. 2020, June, last human rights session, 28 countries and issues jointly statement. At least one Islamic country supports this joint statement against the Chinese government. It is Albania. Albania and signed this joint statement, and no, and slowly some. But however, some Islamic society in Europe and some other country and some Malaysia also, some civil society speaking out recently, and Indonesia, some as the rest of some work and Islamic organization, Islamic civil society, and wake up and understand, and this institution no is slowly and stand with us. But however, still because United Nations more than 196 countries member of United States, only 28 countries so far, and issued a public statement. Another 160 countries still silent, or some of them, as I said, support the Chinese government and genocide towards the Uyghur. So it is the reality. So I think it is a time to really take action. It is a time a whole human being should be stand with Uyghurs. This is not only the responsibility of Uyghur Muslims. This is the responsibility of all Muslim world. This is the responsibility of all human beings, because never again is happening again today for the Uyghurs. So thank you for your listening to me, and I'm happy to answer any question.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Mr. Isa. This is very interesting. Your presentation have given us a new perspective, and we've learned so much from your insights, being the chairman of the World Uyghur Congress. It is quite astonishing that the response by the Muslim countries has been so silent. Basically, the Organization of Islamic Conference, which comprises 57 countries, boasts that it represents the rights of Muslims worldwide. They are very loud in certain instances when it comes to violations of human rights of other Muslim people, like Rohingya or the Kashmiri Muslims in the neighboring Kashmir, Indian and the Pakistani disputed territory. But however, when it comes to Uyghur, it is quite astonishing. So my question to you, and let's start the debate with this question, and we've got other questions lined up, is what have you been doing about it to put pressure on the Muslim countries to start realizing what's going on in Xinjiang, in East Turkestan, in Xinjiang, with Uyghur people? Do you have a strategy how to deal with this issue when it comes to relations with the Islamic countries, particularly OIC?
Yes, this is one of the important point of the World Uyghur Congress or advocacy work. This is several reasons why Islamic country continue silence. One of the important reason, economic interest. economic interest. Secondly, some Islamic country has a own problem, particularly human rights record is very bad. So that's why this country have cooperate each other, United Nations. This is one thing. However, today, as I said, Islamic value targeted by the Chinese government, because CCP, Chinese Communist Party ideology is against the religious, any religious, Even today, and that Chinese Christian also suffer. Tibetan Buddhists are suffering. But Chinese CCP saying Islam is ideological illness. It was eradicated. This today, BBC published a report, Al Jazeera, and even my brother Olsi also, he published YouTube. He published his view, what he is seeing here. So I think the atrocity, this genocide, and must be known whole human being, all the Muslim country. I don't believe they didn't know the knowledge of this. They know very well. Because of the interest, they are signing no. And we, World Uyghur Congress, we are trying to raise this issue to Islamic country. But we don't have a good enough resource, capacity to doing this advocacy in this country. Quite a lot of Islamic countries, no Uyghur community. For example, Malaysia, no Uyghur community, no Uyghur organization. It is the one challenge for us. And only some country, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, in Pakistan, very few Islamic country has a Uyghur population. In Albania have only 3-4 Uyghurs. Some country, a couple of hundred, some hundred in the couple of thousand. These countries and political system really didn't allow to doing some political activism on the advocacy work. Some country and the political atmosphere allowed us to do something, but we don't have a capacity, or Uyghur organization, Uyghur community has this country. For example, Malaysia, Indonesia. Last 2019, we sent one delegation to Malaysia and Indonesia. World Uyghur Congress, one delegation visit 2 weeks visit in Malaysia. We had very high level meeting. My delegation meet Azizi, that time Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia. They are meet here, and also meet some other political party, some high level officials, and they know the situation, and we meet, I personally met Anwar Ibrahim as well. He knows the situation very well. However, Malaysia sometimes and raise this issue, and when if some media interview Malaysia government official high level and mentions Uyghur issue, but to the officially UN level, United Nations Human Rights Council, this is all the time, and this country is silent. And my delegation visit Indonesia as well. Some civil society in Indonesia, beginning of the 2018, hold a big demonstration, support us. But Chinese embassy, every country, particularly Muslim country, very active. If small reaction against the Chinese government, next day, Chinese embassy immediately visits them, and gives them and fake information, invites them to China to visit, For example, and one of the biggest civil society in Indonesia, Muhammadiyah, they are organized with some other civil society mass demonstration in 2018. After this demonstration, Chinese embassy in Indonesia immediately visited Muhammadiyah, then asks them to visit China, invites them, and gives them some wrong information. Then they are silent. So it is the World Uyghur Congress, we continue trying to reach out the Islamic countries, government, and the civil society. I personally met OIC organized Islamic conference ambassador in the United Nations in Geneva. Madame Bagli, I met personally twice and expressed all the issue. She's saying, Mr. Isa, I know. I personally sympathize for the Uyghur Muslim, but unfortunately, I couldn't do anything because I have to report all these things to my boss, to organization secretariat, Islamic conference. If I couldn't get any directive from them, I couldn't say anything. So far, organization Islamic conference never condemned for the Chinese policy towards Uyghur. Even they made a statement support Chinese policy. We are supporting Chinese government against terrorism. Well, there is no terrorist activity. I already told you. I have never seen a real bomb with a gun in my lifetime, but I'm the top terrorist of the Chinese list. I was suffering 21 years, was red notes by the Interpol. But I had to fight for my right. Finally, 2018, my red notes was delayed. But I suffered 25. I was arrested so many country borders. I still today I cannot enter so many countries because Chinese long arm getting everywhere. You know, so that's why in the OSCE, when the issue is Kashmir, when the issue to the Rohingya, when the issue some of Palestine, some they are published condemning. But is the issue of Uyghur Muslim? They are all the time with the Chinese government together. This is it is a shame. Yeah, so we are continuing, but however, recently we have seen some forward. For example, recently Global Islamic Council, Global Imamic Council based in Baghdad, they reaching out us. We signed a memorandum. They are really understand what's going on for Turkestan, for the Uyghur Muslim. No, and that we are really closely cooperate some Islamic organization around the world. And I hope, and civil society can, in fact, to the government, soon some Islamic government also support us.
Thank you, Mr. Isa. It looks like you have been working tirelessly on putting pressure on Muslim countries in different forums internationally. Obviously, there is a lot of duplicity, and many Muslim countries oppress their own population other than economic interests. So maybe we can look at it through that prism as well. Thank you for explaining this to us. Now, can I move to Dr. Olsi? What is your take, Dr. Olsi, on the situation? There is a question directed to you because you visited the region yourself. Do you think the Chinese authorities could have orchestrated better? Because you're a critic of the human rights violations, but still you were allowed to travel and to see the situation yourself. Have you experienced any difficulties in relation to that in the aftermath?
Yes, I was attacked by the Chinese government and the information office of Xinjiang authority. After coming out of China, they accused me of being a fake reporter, of being a liar. They told me that I had malicious intentions for visiting Xinjiang and what have you. You see, I mean, coming back to what Dolkun was saying before, and to the reason why especially the Muslim world is not reacting for the Uyghur issue. I just wanted to mention something, that there is no Muslim world. Muslim world is divided, separated, lacks democracy in many countries. We are ruled by autocrats, thieves, and dictators. Countries from Saudi Arabia to Albania, we have gross human rights violations. Here in Albania, we have Muslim believers and imams who are jailed by our autocrat Edi Rama with the backing of the US embassy. So, I mean, the suffering of Muslims is something that is not happening only in Xinjiang, but is happening in many Muslim countries. And then this myth of a Muslim world is a myth. I mean, there is no Muslim world. We can see, for example, what is happening nowadays with the issue of Palestine, of Jerusalem, how Arab countries from Bahrain to United Arab Emirates, they're joining the Israelis and they're recognizing their illegal annexation of the Arab lands. So, I mean, the Uyghur thing is a very remote thing for the Muslim and Arab world. And moreover, we don't have countries that have direct national interest on the Uyghur issue. Because, let us say, I explain this thing even to our Muslim friends here in Albania. Muslims are discriminated, but Turkey does nothing to help us. Turkish government supports our autocratic ruler, Edi Rama, who steals elections, gives him weapons and money, while the Muslim community suffers. But the behavior of Turkey is different with the Turks of Cyprus or of Azerbaijan, where they have some immediate national interest. Let's take the example of Pakistan. Pakistan speaks a lot about Kashmir, supports Kashmiris, but doesn't speak about Uyghurs. And this is again related to the national interest of Pakistanis, because they see Kashmir as the integral part of Pakistan. They do so much about it. The unfortunate thing about the Uyghurs is that I don't know, I was talking to some other media a few days ago about the Uyghur issue, is that the Uyghur issue is like the Palestinian issue, is like the Kosovo issue, is like the Kashmiri issue. This Muslim inhabited region was colonized almost at the same time when Kosovo, when Bosnia, when Kashmir, when Palestine were taken by non-Muslim powers. The unfortunate thing about the Uyghurs is that they are too far from the heart of the Muslim world. Number two is that China is not a country. China is a superpower. It's probably 1/4 of mankind or 1/5. So there is no country that can stand up against China, apart from Russia and the United States, and who can force the Chinese to stop what they're doing. I mean, countries like, let us say, Albania, Malaysia, Bosnia, whatever, what can they do to China? Nothing. Even major Muslim countries like, let us say, Turkey or Iran or Pakistan, even they cannot do anything to China, because China is a big, big superpower. The only power that can force the Chinese to rethink their anti-Muslim policies in Xinjiang are probably the United States, who, when they speak about the Uyghurs, they speak for their own imperialist interest. Because the world has to understand even something else, that after China will finish with the Uyghurs, Chinese imperialism is going to threaten other Muslim neighbors of China. The state ideology of the Chinese Communist Party, and moreover the government of China, is a totalitarian government. They do not have the same values that we have in the West. When I visited Xinjiang and I was shocked by the treatment that they were doing to the Uyghurs, I was telling to our Chinese hosts, how on earth you can treat people like this? And you know, they didn't understand us. I mean, they were surprised by the way how I was talking to them. They're telling to me, oh, we're giving them free education. But I was telling to them, look, these people, they don't need your free education, they need their freedom. And for the Chinese state as a totalitarian state that it is, human individuals, they have no value. They perceive humans as robots, as animals that have to be milked, obey, and work. Apart, differently from us who live in Europe and in the West, who we respect human freedoms, human dignity, religious freedom, and what have we. For the Chinese, this thing made no sense. So, I mean, when we face the Uyghur issue and when we face China, we have to understand that we are facing, when it comes to the Chinese government, some people who do not think like us, who do not act like us, and who do not respect human beings like we do. China is a big problem for the mankind and not only for the Uyghurs.
Thank you, Dr. Olsi, for that insight. Can I go back to Dolkun Isa? There is a question about the students, Uyghur students who study overseas. Some of them study in Malaysia. Do they have, according to your information that you have with your Congress, any information about difficulties Uyghur population, young people facing when they want to leave to study abroad? Is that a problem as well?
This is the one major problem we are facing, and the Uyghur refugees problem. And recently, but there is some positive step we have seen. Recently, Malaysia Minister of Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, I think, he made a statement saying we will not deport Uyghur refugees to China. This is the very good news. Brought us a big hope to us. But 2016, Malaysia deported correct exact number I don't know, but more than 15 Uyghurs deported because of the Chinese request to China. So then they say this is the media report at the time. Yes, some is among them, some of them students, some of them Uyghur refugees. Yeah, but quite a lot of some other neighboring country from Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, and Cambodia, Thailand. This country deported Uyghur refugees, and some of them also escaped from China illegally to this country. Some of them Uyghur students deported. 2009 December, 22 Uyghur refugees forcibly deported to Cambodia to China. Still we have no news on them. 2015, 109 Uyghur refugees deported from Thailand to China. 173 Uyghur refugees settled on the Turkey. Turkish government accepts them. Still 54 Uyghur refugees are detained since 2014 in the Thailand detention centers. 2014, 2013, and the huge Uyghur refugees crisis was happening. Uyghurs, because of Chinese persecution, some Uyghurs, thousands of Uyghurs escaped from China to Vietnam, then Thailand, then came to Malaysia. Some of them deported to China, and most of them used the Malaysia transit country to come to Turkey. So it is Kazakhstan, neighboring Kazakhstan also deported so far at least 50 Uyghurs. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, some of them international organization reported, tell us. So far, more than 380. It is recorded number. It is the official number. But unofficially and secretly how many Uyghur refugees so far deported to China from different countries, we don't know. But we have as a number around 400 Uyghur refugees from different countries deported to China. And now is Turkey is only the country hosting for the Uyghur refugees since 2013, 2014. Now is in Turkey, couple of thousand Uyghurs children are stateless because they are born in Turkey. Chinese government, Chinese embassy don't give them the birth certificate. And according to the Turkish law, someone who born in Turkey couldn't get automatically citizenship. So that's why a couple of thousand Uyghurs children are stateless. And this couple of thousand Uyghurs are stateless because their Chinese passports valid up, but Chinese consulate, Chinese embassy in Turkey didn't give the extended this passport. Then is a not legal document now, then also stateless. This is a major problem. Uyghur refugees problem is a major problem for us. As I said, however, Malaysian government recently made announcement saying the Malaysia government will not be deported any Uyghur refugees to China. This is the bring us more hope. It is a good, a very welcome decision.
So there is a positive development on the
Exactly.
part of the Malaysian government, which is very encouraging.
Yes.
Dr. Olsi, can I get back to you again with the question about the difference between one of the viewers is asking a question, and I think you would probably be well placed to answer it. Is it a question of religion or ethnicity alone? Perhaps it is a civil society problem, and the viewer is asking, saying that if the Uyghurs were Buddhists, they would still be oppressed. So the issue do you think this issue should be fought on the basis of civil society, that all people should have the freedom to practice their lifestyle and culture, whatever it is? So is it, do you think, the religious, or is it ethnic? What do you think? Or is it both?
I think it is both. China, in its official declarations about the war that it has launched in Xinjiang, it declares that it is fighting three evils, which are separatism, people who want to create an independent East Turkestan, terrorism, which it claims that we have some Uyghur Muslims who are Islamic terrorists and they come and kill us, because China claims that because it has the right to kill the Uyghurs, but when Uyghurs fight back, they make them terrorists. And the third evil that the Chinese government is fighting in Xinjiang is extremism. Now, for people who are not familiar with Xinjiang, since, I don't know the year, probably 2017, maybe Dolkun can correct me on this, the autonomous Uyghur region of Xinjiang has brought a de-extremification regulation. This is a bylaw adopted by the province, whereby if somebody reads it, the Chinese government, the colonial the Chinese government of Xinjiang has declared Islam an extremist ideology. So if you, let us say, when your father dies, you pray his janazah, you wash his body. If you have a kid and you tell to your child who is under 18 that you are Muslim, that your God is Allah, is not Xi Jinping, that your prophet is Muhammad, is not Confucius or whatever, you are immediately declared as an extremist. If you go to a shop and you want to buy halal meat, if you have a Quran and you are caught reading the Quran, according to this de-extremification regulation, you are immediately declared to be an extremist. And what happens if you are found to do any kind of practice of your religion? You are immediately taken away from your family and sent to a concentration camp where you will be forced to never pray, to curse Allah and Muhammad, to praise Xi Jinping, and for you to be allowed to go back to the society, you should speak perfect Chinese and you should hate your religion. So to the question, if the conflict in Xinjiang is ethnic or religious, I would say it is both. China perceives Islam as an extremist ideology. In their white papers, in state museums, in public documents, etc., they describe Islam as a disease. And we have to know something, that in the history of imperialism, starting from American imperialism to French colonialism in Africa and in Asia, and to the Chinese imperialism as well, Islam has always been perceived as a very powerful ideology which mobilizes people to resist against oppression. We know, for example, the history of French in Algeria. When they went to Algeria, the conflict was ethnic because they were fighting against the Algerians, but it was also religious. People who want to understand more on this, I suggest them to read Francis Fanon's book, Algeria Unveiled, where he shows the colonial policies of the French on destroying Islam and the tradition in Algeria. Because Islam is a revolutionary ideology. And when we were in Xinjiang, in Urumqi, during the lectures that we had, Chinese propagandists and officials, they made it very clear to us that they were fighting the Uyghurs, but they were telling to us that until 1990s, we had problem with Uyghur separatists. People like Dolkun Isa, who was shown to us as being a terrorist. Rabia Kader, Dolkun Isa, and even Dalai Lama, who is not a Muslim, but who leads the Tibetan resistance, they're all depicted by the Chinese government as being terrorists. But these people, apart from being ethnic separatists against China, because these people are telling to the Chinese, look, we're Tibetans, we're Uyghurs, we're Turkic, we're Kazakhs, we have our own culture, so please leave us alone. Like you had in Bosnia or Albanians in Kosovo with Serbia. We were telling to the Serbs, look, you are Serbs, we're Bosniaks, we're Albanians, we have our tradition, give us autonomy or independence or whatever. This is one aspect of the war that China is fighting, which is ethnic separatism. Dolkun Isa is not an Islamic mullah. He is not a Mullah Omar. He's not Dalai Lama. He's not a religious figure. He's an ethnic figure of the Uyghur movement. But apart from that, what happened with the Uyghurs after 1990s, when China started to open to the world, we had thousands of Uyghurs immigrating out of East Turkestan, Xinjiang, and going to the Muslim countries, going to Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Gulf countries, Malaysia, etc. When these people went to the Islamic world, they started to learn about Islam. They were Islamized. I've interviewed many Uyghurs who told me, some of them were in Malaysia, told me we didn't have hijab, we didn't pray, we didn't know Quran until when we came to Malaysia. So what happened? These people were in Jahiliyyah. They were ignorant about their religion when they were in East Turkestan, because Chinese authorities do not allow the practice of Islam. And these people, when they went out, they were Islamized. And then when they came back, they came with new ideas. They started to tell to their people that since my name is Mahmoud, is Isa, is Mustafa, is Muhammad, is Mehmet, those are names that connect us to our Islamic tradition. So apart from the secular ethnic separatism that China faced, then it was faced with two other forms of threats. One was the Islamic revival, which China is now crushing it, destroying mosques, destroying graveyards, destroying tekkes, destroying old, very beautiful Islamic towns like they're doing in Kashgar and in Aksu, where they're building new one based on a Chinese model and Buddhist model. Even the existing mosques that they allow, they destroy their minaras, they destroy their domes, because they told us this thing openly. When we were in Xinjiang, in Urumqi, we went and we visited the Islamic Institute of Xinjiang, where they had put Han Chinese as its director. And this guy, he was more Buddhist than being a Muslim. And he was telling to us, look, we are destroying the domes of this mosque. We're building them as temples. We have built this mosque here, but look, we put this sign in order to teach people when they come here that before being Muslim, we were Buddhist, etc. So the conflict is ethnic and religious. And you can see, I mean, and the Chinese, as Dolkun Isa mentioned, after 9/11, and the Chinese are very good on copying. I mean, they're experts on reverse engineering and copying. They copied the Anglo-American propaganda against Islam on fighting terrorism, and they wanted to show to West that if you have iPhone and Samsung, we are producing our own Huawei version of fighting Islam here. So I mean, and the thing is, because I read a few days ago in Al Jazeera one article from one guy in Canada who wrote about Uyghurs, and he was saying, look, religion is not important, the conflict is only ethnic. No, it is not. And the Chinese say it very openly. They're fighting Islamic fundamentalism in one side, which calls for the revival of the Islamic culture among the Uyghurs, and they're fighting even their religiosity. So if you are a practicing Muslim and you say, brothers, Allah told us in Quran we have to make jihad, you are terrorist. You are immediately shot, killed, no joke with you. But if you are a very moderate Muslim, if you just say, I want to eat halal food, or I want to live a halal life, or I want to pray to Allah, you are immediately declared an extremist. And you are sent to a concentration camp, because the ideology of state officials in China is that while you have been infected by what they call the Islamic virus, they hope that after 2 or 3 years of brainwashing and hard labor, you can be rehabilitated, you can renounce your Islam and your Turkic culture, and there is a chance for you to end up as a slave factory worker somewhere in China.
Thank you, Dr. Olsi, for that. Our time is running out. Let me go back to Mr. Isa. Mr. Isa, can you tell us what are the possible options? What are the solutions for the East Turkestan or Xinjiang autonomous region? Do you have any feedback from the Chinese authorities? What is acceptable to the Chinese authorities, and what are the demands, the clear demands by the world Uyghur Congress and obviously your people within the country?
Well, after testimony, camp survivors. Now is several camp survivor in foreign country. Now is Turkey, some European country, United States. One of them camp survivor just yesterday after arriving to the United States. So and all the camp survivors and also a media documentary like BBC, Deutsche Welle, Al Jazeera, Sky News, and New York Times report. Yesterday was another report was published, and ASPI report, and like eyes witness like Olsi. Well, this and other international NGO independent experts report, and show us, and there is no word can be described what is happening for the Uyghur people besides genocide. So it is Chinese government, this intention very clearly, it is genocide. So first, there's countries and United States international organization should be accept and is this what's going on in Turkestan is a genocide. It is not cultural genocide, it is a genocide, you know. And all definition is 1948 Genocide Convention, Article 2, 5 definition, all is happening in this Turkestan. Okay. So all this is not, today is the all country, all human beings should be stand with Uyghur. All country should be set up coalitions. This is the first. Now is United States, some European country, and already implement some sanction against the Chinese government official and Chinese company. But only 1 and 2 country is just doing this and not effectively. Should be all the country and should be set up coalition. So far, United Nations Human Rights Council, some country raises issue, but so far no Secretary General of United Nations no made any single statement on this. This is atrocity. More than 3 million, or recently report said 8 million people suffering today. Secretary General no made a statement. No any single resolution from the Human Rights Council so far. We are constantly raise this issue. It is the big issue today. And no OEC single statement. Muslim country, no Muslim country made a statement on this. So it's the only thing is, and no, there is a double standard for China. From the Western country, from the Muslim country. We already discussed in the issue, Palestine issue, Kashmir issue, some other Muslim issue. OEC at least condemning it, doing something. But the Uyghur Muslim case, then the silence, even not all the silence, support the China. So should over the double standard for this, this issue. And of course, World Uyghur Congress, we call the Chinese government since many years to the dialogue, peaceful way, solve this problem. But Chinese response all the time use, I have a power, I'm the superpower, I can do understand what I want, I don't listen to your voice. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, Chinese government little bit accountable, little bit patient and for the international pressure. Because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, China was not economic power. But now China is second big economic power. So as all the countries, doesn't matter, Muslim country or some Western country, all depend on the Chinese money, Chinese economy. Because of the economic interest, then sometimes most of some European country, even Germany, so far recently a little bit, we have seen little bit change, you know. Recently also, and continue make business with China. It is a time not business as usual. Because all the human beings have a, particularly European country, Germany, has a bad experience from the Nazi regime. Millions of people died in the concentration camps. That's why saying never again. But it's happening again. But just for the economic interests, this country is silence mostly. They know what is going on there. So that's why, and we call Chinese government to the through the dialogue solve the problem with China. No international pressure to the Chinese government. Then Uyghurs Muslim. This is a small population. I can just eliminate it and all the Uyghurs, and I can do it any atrocity. Nobody care of this. This is the Chinese mentality today. So that's why whole the world, and particularly and all the democratic nation, Muslim nation should be takes accountable for the Chinese government, set up the coalition. This is the first thing is. And we, of course, World Uyghur Congress, we're completely against any kind of the violation, and we don't want to the terrorism, and we are really condemning any terrorist activism, you know. But China is blame any kind of opposition voice puts the same category terrorism, and try to use this word and correct on us. So so all the world should be stand up and set up the coalition, and without international pressure to the Chinese government, we cannot stop this genocide. This is only set up international coalition and make pressure, stop, make business. So many Western companies continue make business and use Uyghur forced labor. And today is Siemens. Today is a German company, Bosch, Adidas, and the rest of some US company, some European country, all and the Japanese company continue make business China. Yeah, one side is talking about the rise of Uyghur issue to the United Nations. Other side, this company continue make business. We cannot stop Chinese genocide. So that's why this country should be and take concrete action and stop the business with China. Then only way stop this atrocity. Particularly, I use this opportunity to Muslim country and the Muslim brother. Now we know some Muslim Islamic society already stand up and doing something, but it's not good enough. Should be civil society like some civil society have some strong impact. Some Muslim countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, at least. This Muslim society should be making pressure to the government, and it must be broken the silence. This is the only way, and making pressure to the Chinese government can stop this atrocity.
Thank you, Mr. Issa, for your insight. We are now just a couple of minutes from concluding our webinar. Thank you, Dr. Olsi, for your fascinating insights, particularly your experiences, personal experiences from your visit to Xinjiang region. Obviously, this issue needs more time for further discussions, and we hope that the Islamic Renaissance Front will dedicate more time to this topic in the future. But on behalf of the Islamic Renaissance Front and its founding director, Dr. Dato Farooq Ahmed Musa, and its director, Azrul, and the entire team, I wish to thank you both for joining us. Thank you to all the viewers who joined us from different parts of the world. Unfortunately, we couldn't answer all of their questions, but they're sending their regards to both of you, Dr. Olsi and Mr. Risa, from Aceh in Indonesia, from different parts of Indonesia, from Malaysia. So it is very encouraging to see that people are taking interest in this immensely important issue. And I am glad, Mr. Risa, that you mentioned the ASPI report. It is very significant, and I was reading it recently that a lot of Uyghur brothers and sisters were being transferred from their homes to different parts of China, and this amounts to thousands if not tens of thousands, which, as you rightly mentioned, is also a sign that the genocide is being perpetrated against your people in East Turkestan or in Xinjiang or autonomous region. Once again, thank you to everyone. Thank you for your participation, and we hope we will be able to discuss this further in a near future, and hopefully the world will start listening. Hopefully the international community will start listening and taking what you are arguing very seriously. Muslims have a habit to blame the West for every evil that befall the Muslim world, and particularly the United States and Europe, and often rightly so, because of their inaction and duplicity on many different issues. However, it appears this time that the United States and the European Union countries and the human rights organizations, mainly in the West, are the most vocal supporters of the Uyghur people. And I think it is very disappointed that the Organization of Islamic Conference and many Muslim countries have become a hostage to the Chinese money, and that Pakistan is, obviously China is investing $50–60 billion in this CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Iranians have recently made a deal with China to invest a staggering $400 billion in the Iranian economy. And we noticed the amazing duplicity here on the part of the Muslim countries. They advocate the Palestinian cause, rightly so, and the cause of other Muslims around the world. However, when it comes to your people, the Uyghur people, they are very silent. So we hope that this humble contribution by the Islamic Renaissance Front will raise awareness both in Malaysia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and the Balkan region, and also in Europe and internationally, so that this issue is finally resolved and the people of Uyghur people achieve the justice and freedom that they deserve and their democratic rights. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your participation. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you.